Thank you everybody for coming to our show, Unlikely Heroes. This is Andy Campagnone and Samuel Richardson, the artist. Andy, and you are? Oh, Christine Farouche. Help me here. I'm the painter and Samuel is the sculptor. We know Andy through our Key Pi Pi Fellows. And she is director of the Museum of History in Lancaster, director of the Key Pi Pi workshops, curator, and we're just really happy to have you here to discuss our work today.
Thank you. So I got a chance to, and apologies for the tardy arrival. We were coming in from the city, but I had a chance this week to take a walk through the exhibition and kind of live with the space. I'm familiar with both Christine's work and Samuel's work. I've curated them both into shows before, right? Yes. Sam for sure, Christine, maybe not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. But that's coming, right? Yeah, that's coming.
Yeah, that's right.
I was thrilled to hear that she was putting this exhibition together and the two of them pairing their work together. And at first, as any of you that you knew their work separately, were like, how's that going to work out? But I think there's some really great vision here, specifically with like some of the subject matter that deals directly with like kind of post-apocalyptic times and what does nature look like and how are we part of nature, and what does that look like for young people growing into the next phase of our existence as human beings, and what that looks like for the animal kingdom as well, which we are part of. And that we're not, and one of the things I also loved about this exhibition as I walked through this week was that we're not separate from nature. And both the work, both the paintings and the sculpture, it's an incorporation of human beings being part of nature and not separate from nature. So to me, that was really interesting to kind of sit here and think about that and the themes of how we always separate ourselves from that. Certainly Samuel does not do that. Like everything that she makes considers nature in both, the work is made from flora and fauna, so it's really basically covering the whole scheme of nature. And Christine's work also with the human beings in nature, although this depiction of nature is a little bit scary and not so alive, but I think there's statements in that too. So maybe what we should start talking about is maybe each of you want to talk about a little bit about the impetus for the work. You want to start, Christine, about because these paintings are definitely a departure from the last body of work that you just finished.
Yeah, many of you know, I think, a little bit about how we came about with went to the forest after the fire, the creek fire in near Shaver Lake, and were curious about what was there after the fire. And so me and my models went and tromped around in the thick ash and the bent branches, and it was a year of thinking about what we were, the sky turned orange. The painting back there in the corner was definitely inspired by us here in the Bay Area on the day that the sky turned orange. And actually Gina, who's one of the artists here, she has some photographs in the back also from that similar time. And on that day, I would say maybe even that day was the point that I decided to do this work. A few years back, I had been in the valley and seen fires coming over the mountains and wondered about my friends that lived there and our children being safe. But that day I had a moment where we were just trying to do our normal thing and nothing seemed normal. I didn't really know if things were okay. And so just kind of diving into that and explored it more.
I began this series because of a trip to South Africa where I was so moved out by the natural beauty and then moved by the impending loss of most of the beauty of the land and the animal. We hear about this constantly, but when I saw it in person, I was really conflicted about it, what could I do? I mean, I as an individual can't change much about that, but I wanted to kind of give an elegy of my feelings about the beauty there. We saw many animals in their natural habitat in a preserve that is parallel to Kruger National Park, and there are a few humans in that area, in fact practically none. And I was with some people and a tracker who found out early in the morning one day that a pack of wild dogs, African wild dogs, were in that area. And there's great excitement over this because they're very hard to find. Of course, I had my mind set on giraffes, lions, zebras, and I hadn't really heard about them or had known about them. So we got up at dawn and went out in search of them, and with this anticipation, and suddenly rounded a bend, and there was this magnificent pack of these beautiful animals with long, spindly legs and lush fur, autumn-colored coats. And the impact of seeing them, they stand together and move together and have this kinetic energy of head butting and jostling, and it was just electric to see them. And we watched them. Of course, they locked eyes on us and watched us too, and then very deliberately moved in unison away into the bush, and there they went, their long, spindly legs moving away. And that became, I wanted to talk about Africa in my work, and that became the subject that I chose because it was more specific than a general impression of the beauty that I had seen, and it was the memory that haunted me the most years later. This work came together years later. As I was hiking in the park out in LA, I don't know if you know, Dodger Stadium has a beautiful park behind it. And I live near downtown, so I hiked there and found a fallen tree that had these branches that resembled bones. They just had this feeling of like I could see the shape of bones in the fallen tree. So that's when the dog series, gelled in my mind, and then I went forward with it. And it's a trial and error at some point. And, gradually it came into being. I build, people ask if they're stuffed, and I would say actually no, because I build structures first, and they're solidly built with wire, wood, and foam rubber. And I build them out the way a sculptor would use clay in an additive process. And when the shapes are, when I'm satisfied with shapes and I know that I have the gesture right and the expressions the way I want them, then I stretch fabric over and roughly sew it in place. So it's a sculpture first.
I love the fact that you're using the materials in like the city to make these really like wild dogs, and they're like they look like they could be these like urban attack. But it's the opposite, right? They're like
it's the opposite. They're so far away and so rare. Very few people. I'm surprised how many people do actually know about them. In the opening here, I met a few people who did know quite a bit, and that it's kind of exciting to know that. The urban life with this natural resource is kind of a
so great. And you don't normally associate Los Angeles with finding trees
falling
that can
in
be
the park.
made into art.
Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of touch on the fact that you're both editorializing nature, like the
Yes.
our response and our responsibility towards the living environment around us, whether that's built or whether that's a natural environment. And Unlikely Heroes, the name of the show is, I actually didn't get to have a conversation about it with you guys on how that came about and what that came from.
Well, one, for me, in like throughout my work, I'm looking at my girls often being heroes in their imagination play, where they're confronting a situation, and like all of us have done this at one point or another. It's like asking a what if, and then you like try to figure it out. And when you're young, you use all sorts of, whether you're being a superhero or you're running away, or like all the Disney movies, the parents are dead, so they have to survive. Right? So that, like the small or young or maybe female isn't often the hero in the story. It's different now. But then that was one thing that I grasped and latched onto when you were talking about your creatures, and you want to talk about how you like, especially the birds. I feel like, and then the yeah.
I love the David and Goliath stories, and they are all throughout our popular culture and movies and fiction. And as sad as I am about what is happening to the natural world, I want to envision a victorious future, and perhaps, in my own world, I'm willing a better direction. And then I was thinking about the birds when that series was in progress, about how one alone isn't really powerful enough to stand up to a bigger adversary, but a lot of them. I mean, we've all seen the Alfred Hitchcock movie, where once they swarm in a huge flock, they become really threatening and powerful. So that took off. And then but Christine, you picked up on the fact that these dogs, the African wild dog, is always in a pack. Mm-hmm. They don't survive alone. They have to hunt their prey, and they do hunt prey that are many times larger. The African buffalo is one, and then they fight off predators like the lion and the hyena, and they can't do it alone. And that was like the aha moment, because your daughters, I was intrigued.
Also a pack.
Also, anyone, you all probably. Right here, always strong in numbers. But we had this conversation one time about how you never worry about them when they're all together. Mm-hmm. And I like that, knowing that, and thought about it and thought, yeah, that makes sense.
It was also interesting in the first couple days of the show, and we were comparing these dogs to like domestic dogs, and how our domestic dogs, and then this is like the wild versus the city or whatever. Our domestic dogs are like, sometimes they're a little stressed because they're by themselves, but when they're with us, they're fine. Like they're our pack, and everyone's dog has a different personality. But that the human relationship with nature again, like in another way.
Well, and it's also interesting that for me that the both of you are using kind of the sensitivity of nature, right? These birds are going to be extinct. The packs of dogs are slowly dwindling. The not sensitivity, but the for your children also, like they're like, what's going to happen? It's unknown. Do we know from being in a, I don't want to say sensitive because that's not the right word, but just being vulnerable, right? These are vulnerable types of birds that are disappearing. These are vulnerable land animals that are disappearing, and our children are also vulnerable in this. So I think there's this really beautiful connection in here. But it also speaks to the strength of them and being able to be resilient in the face of fire, and being resilient in the face of being, dwindling environments or changes in the environment. And I liked that comparison when I sat in here the other day and looked at that. But I think I want to kind of dive into like the visuals that we're looking at, because one of the beautiful things about this exhibition is making the physical connection, the visual physical connections with the work, like the lines in the legs of which are white branches, and then we have the direct opposite. You find that direction in the paintings, but they're not white, they're opposite. So you have like the legs and the bones of nature, but they're black. I loved seeing that connection. Also like this, these aren't really, the skins of the animals are made from fabrics that people wear, right? Like, so is this other connection between, and the girls are dancing with this kind of other fabric that represents fire. So there's like all these things that are not what they are, but they are. They're representing something that they are. But I wonder, I mean, Sam, I think it'd be interesting, and I'm not sure if everyone knows where you come from. So I think that might be a point to kind of bring up your history.
You mean my professional background?
Yep.
My first career was, I was a fashion designer on 7th Avenue in New York. And that's where my art school training happened, because as I was a designer, I realized that the people who were getting the jobs that I wanted could draw very well. And I could draw, but I wasn't satisfied. So I began taking art classes at night, and I began with life drawing. I wanted to draw freehand, and I wanted to really get the gesture and the character of the subject. I just kept doing it, and 10 years went by, and I was still doing all these art classes, and I had by then many excellent instructors and many different approaches to it, and eventually surprisingly landed a job as a full-time illustrator for Ralph Lauren. And so my job became not clothing, but full-time artist. And but I will always have that tactile approach to the work, because it was much of the work I did was all about the three-dimensional structure, and a lot of it involved there's some techniques, classical techniques in design, where you actually mold the fabric around the dress form. And so I have this feel for three-dimensional subjects. And so I obviously moved to California many years ago, and then as the art community here has been very supportive of my work, and so I'm finding that I'm using some of my familiar materials in my work, and that's.
I love the connection.
Yeah.
Something fun that we discovered yesterday too. We were at the Joan Mitchell show and talking about painting, and she asked me, how do you start your paintings? And I start them with the structure, usually with brown underpainting, and then build it, and then kind of abstract from there. And so actually, like, even though yours is three-dimensional and mine is painting, we kind of have the same process. And of course, I spent years doing figure drawing as well.
Yeah.
And that quick gestural, like the gestural qualities of my work and the gestural qualities of her work, or like something we really connect over.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's so good. But and then Christine, talk about, like, you know, the girls are in these, and I don't know, does everyone know that our subjects in the paintings happen to also be Christine's 3 daughters, which I love, that they are her models, and that the work comes from this place of, you know, being a mother and trying to create the safety of a dangerous environment that you can keep control over. I mean, I can only say that because I'm a mother of 4, so there's like, I see a lot of control in these. As free as they feel, they're also very safe. And I'd love for you to speak about that.
Well, when I've had conversations with other mothers about my concerns for what's in the air, what's in the water, what are the surfaces that we're touching. I mean, you guys, a lot of you saw my picnic series, and it started off with me being worried about like chemicals that are in our environments, or food dyes and stuff like that. And when I talk about it to other moms, sometimes they're like, wow, you're like really stressed out about that. You know, you can't worry about everything. You can't keep them safe from everything. But I just I dive into that and then explore it and do a painting about it. And in this case, we just went to the place where the forest was still on fire on the other side. And our adventure became finding finding a spot where we could really like get in there, but not be actually like
Burned.
right in danger, you know? And I'm like, is this safe? Should I be doing this? Is this, you know? And then like, I mean, it's in a way, it's confronting my fears. And in the earlier work, when it was about the princesses, and I was like, I don't know, what is this influence on these girls that everyone's a princess? What does this mean? Is this okay for their identity? It was in their social environment. And as I watched my daughters deal with it, I saw they were fine. They were turning the princess story into like, put on a superhero mask with that, and we're good. We're strong, we're surviving, we're fine. So it is kind of like grappling my fears, but it always seems to come out, like they come out on top, and they're figuring it out, which I guess is kind of with like what you're saying is like a hopeful ending, is that, you know, maybe we're gonna find ways to fight the fires in a better way, or, you know, I don't know, you know, and this one in the back is called Playing with Fire, also along with that same line of them using their imagination to grapple and deal and come up with solutions. We all are gonna experience destruction in our life, whether it's a forest fire or literally like, I mean, so many people have devastating effects from these fires right now, but we all will have loss, and we'll all have to imagine our way out of it.
Right. There wouldn't be here right now, given all the number of things that have happened to anyone that just lives in the Bay Area. I mean, the things that have happened here. And people still exist, and nature is still thriving for the most part. Let's see, I had like a whole list of stuff I wanted to talk to you guys about in my head, and then we got lost our car, and then got sidetracked.
We've covered a lot.
We have covered a lot. Okay, so how about this? What's next for you, Sam?
I'm involved now in a series on lions, and I want my imagery to go more in a, how should I say, deconstructed direction. As I work more with these materials, I find that the rendering becomes rougher, more asymmetrical, and there's something I like about that. I obviously, if I love Africa the way I do, I love the art, and I love the way there's a spontaneity, and it's poetic. It's poetic imagery. They leave out details because that strengthens the shapes and the expressions that are left, and that's where I'm going with lions. So it's still a little dark. I used teeth in the dogs I did. I will use those again so that they're not cute. They're edgy. But then also the mythology and the cultural meaning of what a lion means. And I've been reading about ancient mythology and folk tales about lions and how they've been symbols in our culture. For example, the ancient Etruscans used them to guard their tombs. I think the Egyptians. Surprisingly, the African lion in ancient times existed far up into Egypt and far up into Persia. So that's a habitat that once was and now no longer exists. But that explains why their imagery is so strong in ancient art. And I think that's my position, is the imagery is strong in ancient art, and we still have the lion, and so can we go from there to where we are now and talk about, what they mean to us, other than just, an animal to look at the zoo or even on a safari. There's something culturally there.
As I'm sitting here and the three of us are in these chairs and we have this whole group of people looking, I feel like we're in this strange diorama
I agree.
Of the future. This is what this is what humans look like when they, there's this weird, we have this background of this, post-apocalyptic landscape, and the animals, but hopeful. Yes, it's very hopeful, but it does feel like a diorama.
It does. Yeah.
But Christine,
diorama.
What I know, I was just thinking, maybe the two you need to
going, because
diorama.
Yeah. With the
Life-size
new-
diorama.
Yeah, with the new, when I built those little dioramas in the shoe boxes, I was to like paper the back wall and then put some things in it. It's a good plan.
I mean, I just let you know, you go to the Natural History Museum and those like dioramas are
Yeah, they're amazing, yes.
Yeah. But I feel like that here, and like we have this glass and,
Yeah.
people are looking in and it's like, what's happening? Future for you, Christine.
I'm gonna continue to, like with this one, with the new materials around it, the paper and the wood, I'm gonna continue to like push that boundary literally with the materials. My new studio in Magnolia is great for, it could be its own diorama. And next, I already have the canvases for the next painting that I'm gonna do, which is more of an interior, the girls in an environment that is coming back to like the Sargent or Velasquez interior scenes, just to kind of jump there. But with this work, we went back to the site where the fires had come through and we explored it 6 months later in the spring when the green ferns and things were like so surprisingly coming back. So I do have some beautiful images of that. They have white sheer cloths instead and blue dresses. So I'll probably get back to that too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.